Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Let's look at the map of India in an unconventional way. The conventional way is, here we are, here is the map of India, north and south, Ladakh at the top, Kanyakumari at the deepest south. But let's reverse our gaze. Let's look at India, the map of India, southwards. As you look at the map of India southwards and the vast ocean territories, the vast spread out oceans on either side of the peninsula, then you realize, and you see little specks there on either side, then you realize, or you better appreciate, or we better appreciate the point that a lot of these strategic thinkers make, which is that India is blessed to have not one but a series of unsinkable aircraft carriers on either side of the peninsula. On the western side, just where the Arabian Sea meets the much vaster expanse of the Indian Ocean, you have the Lakshadweep Islands, just a little short of Maldives archipelago. So we have the Lakshadweep Islands, and on the eastern side, as you go deeper, just where Bay of Bengal opens out again in the much vaster expanse of Indian Ocean, we have the Andamans and then Nicobars. Nicobars, in fact, take us very close to Indonesian islands and also very close to the mouth of Malacca Strait, which can be a big choke point, say for China, and which the Chinese always worry about. Similarly, on the western side, Lakshadweep. Now we talk a lot more about Andamans and Nicobars because Malacca Strait is often in discussion, and also Port Blair is an easy airport to access. A lot of tourists go there. The old cellular prison is there. The day I record this, it's also the anniversary of Vinayak Damodar Veer Savarkar, who was incarcerated there. So somehow Andamans remain more in our consciousness. Lakshadweep, on the other hand, on the west, it's not talked about so much. One, it's smaller, its population is very small, the island properties are very small. It's a total of about 36 islands, of which only 10 are inhabited. And do you know how many people live there? Exactly 66,000 people live there. 2011 census, I think it was just about 63,000. Maybe it will now be 66,000. It's a very interesting population. It's almost entirely a Muslim population. It's also nearly fully literate, at least 94-95% literate, which is equivalent of full literacy, which is the case, say, in Kerala and Sri Lanka, not far away on the other side. But it's also a place with a very low population growth. So if you look at population growth over a decade, the population growth in Lakshadweep for this small population would be just about, over a decade, just over 6%, whereas nationally it is 17%. So it's a very interesting territory. Now in this territory, there are not many inhabited islands, we know that. Second, there isn't much infrastructure, it's sparsely populated. So there isn't much industrial, tourism, or any other activity. There isn't much naval activity either. In fact, it's only lately, as the importance of these areas has come up, and as India has begun to think, Indian strategic thought has shifted more towards the sea from the land borders, that India has started thinking of these islands on either side, and that's how a small naval base called INS Dweep Rakshak was set up at Kavarati, which is one of the islands, or one of the island points in this archipelago. This archipelago, as I told you, is 36 islands. Besides 36 islands, there are also sort of quasi islands, areas which are very shallow. So there is water on top, but you still have vegetation coming out of that water. That's how shallow those islands are. So they are not islands, and at the same time you also have India's coral islands there. About 10 of these islands are formed by coral. So those are coral islands. Those are very small, and this spreads south, north-south. So at the northern edge, as I said, this is more or less marking the end of the Arabian Sea, and as it goes south, it goes towards the Maldives. Then if you study that geography carefully, or if you just look at the map of the Indian Ocean there, then after Lakshadweep, there is the Maldives archipelago, which went through a long distance. It's several hundred kilometers. Again, many of those islands are not inhabited. Then you have Chagos. Chagos we spoke about the other day. These are also the British Indian Ocean territories, BIOT. In fact, Diego Garcia is a part of Chagos. And that is where the big dispute is. Mauritius now wants Chagos back. And then as you go south, you reach right up to Antarctica. There is very little to stop you, barring the one odd French island. Of course, as you look west from it, you see a lot of the African coast. So African coast runs along it very far away. It's a very empty ocean. Now, to that empty ocean, Lakshadweep also provides an entry point or a choke point, whichever way you want to look at it, and whichever way you are positioned strategically. Remember, it is here at Lakshadweep that a US destroyer just the other day, it had caused some commotion by coming into India's exclusive economic zone and causing a controversy, challenging the Indian regulation which goes beyond the global laws of the sea. So that is what had happened. That is what explains the importance of these territories. Now, the reason we are talking about these territories today is because there is a sudden controversy about it. Now, government has posted a new administrator who's like a lieutenant governor of the territory. His name is Praful Khora Patel. He is a Vardi from Gujarat. He is a confidant of the Prime Minister, a trusted man. He is today unusually the administrator not just of Lakshadweep but also Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Diu. So, a lot of powers in different places and very distant places. He also hit controversy some time back when the MP of Dadra and Nagar Haveli allegedly committed suicide in Bombay in a Mumbai hospital and left a note, and his son also blamed the administrator there for having quote unquote wanted extortion money. That's an allegation from his father, or the MP himself said so, and that is why he allegedly committed suicide. That administrator also is Mr. Praful Khora Patel. There is an FIR with Mumbai police, but then it also gets caught up in the center versus Mumbai, the MVA government versus the BJP government mess. So, the same administrator is now running the Lakshadweep archipelago, and he's brought about a bunch of changes there. What are these changes? So, the changes that he has brought about, first of all, there is something called LDAR. LDAR is Lakshadweep Development Authority Regulations. Second is PASA. PASA is Prevention of Anti-Social Activities Bill which is supposed to then become an act in the course of time. There is also then a third law, which is the Animal Preservation and Regulatory Act, APRA, which is also to be passed. These are the new changes that he has announced, and this has caused a lot of consternation among the small population of Lakshadweep, but also a lot in Kerala. Now, why should Kerala feel so strongly about this territory, which is not a part of Kerala, which has not been a part of Kerala for hundreds of years, which probably or not probably historically was ruled by the kings of Kerala until the last king of the Chera dynasty, which was more than 1,000 years ago. Lately, it was under Tipu Sultan's control. Once Tipu Sultan died, the control of these islands passed on to the British, and that is how India inherited this as India became independent. Now, he says, the new administrator says that this administrative authority, the Lakshadweep Administrative Authority, will develop the islands, with which I don't have a dispute, because from Hawaii to Papua New Guinea, through any other ocean in the world, every country has leveraged its island properties. There is no reason for India to not leverage its island properties. The fact that India hasn't done it either in the West or in the East for all these decades is a terrible thing. India has let itself down. This at a time when South China Sea, North China Sea, Japan, China, the Philippines, Vietnam, everybody is right now caught in this tussle to leverage their island properties. So if India has island properties, India doesn't owe it to anybody to abandon these or leave these alone. So even if an ally, an ally like America, a Quad ally, sends a ship into exclusive economic zones which we think belong to us because of the Lakshadweeps, we still protest because Lakshadweeps are our island properties and these are very, very valuable. Now, you know, the maritime law being what it is, to understand the strategic value of an island, you have to understand what it means in terms of exclusive economic zone and territorial waters. So these tiny islands of Lakshadweep, which total up the total area over land. There is some, as I said, which may be a foot or two below the land. You can walk on it maybe, and there's a lot of lagoon area, but the total area above the land is just 36 square kilometers. It's a fraction of the area of Delhi, right? It's a fraction of the area of most Indian district towns. So 36 square kilometers. Around this, because there are many islands, each island then gives you the same privilege, that so many miles around it are your territorial waters and so many miles around it are your exclusive economic zones. So this area, combined area of 36 square kilometers, gives India 20,000 square kilometers of territorial waters and 4 lakh square kilometers of exclusive economic zone. It's a lot of area that these islands give you. So these islands are of great value. These islands are an asset. These islands can neither be a liability nor something that India then abandons for the future, because particularly now that the focus is on the Indo-Pacific region and India is part of the Quad. Once again, look at the map of the Indian Ocean, beginning Aden or beginning where the Persian Gulf ends or the Arabian Gulf, depending on which side of the Gulf you are. As you go south, there is very little land, and the first bit of land there is the Lakshadweep Islands, then Maldives, then Chagos, then, as I said, Deep Blue Sea, and you reach Antarctica. So this is one way of understanding this. Geographically, if you are interested, I will not go much into that because one, I'll be digressing, and second, I don't know so much as yet, that these archipelagos, that is Lakshadweep, Maldives and Chagos Islands, they are part of what is called as the Chagos Lakshadweep Ridge. This is a ridge or like a high mountain under the water. So that mountain has then created these archipelagos and these islands. So if you are more interested in geography, particularly marine geography, you can read up more on that. Please don't ask me to do that. That will be too much work for me. Now, what have his laws done? So his laws say, first of all, that under this LDAR, that is the new regulations he has passed. So first is LDAR. What is LDAR? Lakshadweep Development Authority regulations. Under this, Lakshadweep government, that is the administrator, now has the power to acquire any land for what he sees as public purpose. That is one, that's important. And then what he's done is that already he's gone and ordered his authorities or his police or whoever to uproot a lot of the huts that the fishermen had built on the coast, or some fishing nets that they had put up. And he has done it, one, because he said this is in violation of the coastal regulation zone. Now, I don't know, if most of these islands are just about a kilometer wide, how can you impose coastal regulation zone there? Because if it says say 500 meters from the high tide line, then 500 meters from the high tide line you might end up on the other side of the tide. So these are very narrow islands. So think then that he has used the Coastal Regulation Zone Acts and also encroachment, etc., etc. So far there has been no concept there of state property and private property. That is one thing that has caused trouble. The second thing is his idea that he will build roads there, he will build resorts, he will also allow the sale of liquor in 3 islands. Right now it's allowed is only one, which is Bangaram, and that is where tourists go, not to the others. Now this is an Islamic population, 65,000 people, almost 100% Muslim, 100% Muslim, almost 100% Sufi. So there is conservatism. Now you may say, what, this is India, what conservatism? What applies to one state should apply to all. So first of all, my facetious comment on that is that Mr. Patel, coming from Gujarat, having been a minister in Gujarat, in fact, post Amit Shah, when Amit Shah was put under arrest, all his portfolios were transferred to Praful Khoda Patel. He's that trusted a minister from Gujarat. So why doesn't he first start liquor sales in Gujarat? Why should Gujarat continue to be in permanent prohibition forever, whether it works on the ground or not? If he is so keen to bring in liquor sales to some islands, some more islands in Lakshadweep to encourage tourism. So why not encourage tourism in Gujarat also? That's also a coastal state with some of the most beautiful beaches in India, some of the most beautiful pristine beaches in India. But anyway, that's a facetious comment. I don't stand against liquor sale. And if liquor can be sold in so many islands in Maldives, which is also a fully and conservatively Islamic country, and Maldives has been able to figure out a very good way of separating its tourism activity from its own social and religious mores. India is not even a religious state, so this should be quite easy to manage this. His idea, he says, is to develop these islands into Maldives-like properties. So why should so many Indians be flocking to Maldives when they can come to Lakshadweep? On that, I don't have a disagreement, except land acquisition is a sensitive issue. You have to create consensus, you have to take local communities forward, and you have to convince them that you don't have any ulterior motives, which is where we begin to get into some trouble. Because the other law that he has, that is the law what is called as PASA, that is Prevention of Antisocial Activities Bill, Act to be ultimately, that gives him the power to arrest anybody without disclosing any charges for a year. Now this is a bunch of islands with a very small population, with almost no crime rate, nothing. So why should the administrator there, this is not some Vasco da Gama or somebody landing up at some islands inhabited by natives or aborigines and enforcing some funny dictatorial law. That is not needed. There is nothing happening, there is no terror activity, nothing. So why is this being done? And that gets people suspicious. The other thing that's happening is a lot of social law changes. For example, the law that he is bringing in, which is Animal Preservation and Regulation Act. Now it is simplistic to say it's an anti-cow slaughter law, because he could turn around, or BJP would turn around and say, read the law, tell us where are we banning beef, where are we banning cow slaughter. So I would have been tempted to say, just as I took a cheap shot over Gujarat, that if liquor is such a good thing and liquor is so essential to bring tourists to Lakshadweep, why not in Gujarat? I am a little bit restrained from saying that, because the law itself doesn't say beef is banned. Otherwise, I would have said, how come you don't ask for a beef ban in Kerala? In fact, we interviewed during the last elections then BJP chief in Kerala, and we asked him, how come you are not demanding beef ban in Kerala? And he said, this is people's food, etc. What they choose to eat is their own thing. Anyway, so where you have electoral interests, you are not pushing the beef issue. Say in Meghalaya, you are not pushing the beef issue. Nagaland, not pushing the beef issue. Kerala, which is next door, you don't push the beef issue. But why here? But the law is cleverly worded. The law just says, first of all, the Animal Husbandry Department as it exists now has been disbanded. And this law says that now for slaughtering any animal, you will have to come to a government authority for permission, for a license. And it's presumed generally that no government authority under the central government will give you a license for slaughtering a cow. Now, most local people who are farmers or fishermen, they rear cows. They rear cows for milk. They use oxen also for plowing their fields, and then they eat meat. So there is a belief that this will fundamentally change their lifestyle. It's a very interesting territory. only 60 odd thousand people spread out, all Muslims and yet all called tribals. This small population is actually one full constituency in national parliament, and it is reserved for scheduled tribes. So this is a very peculiar and a very unique place, and there is a fear that BJP now, seeing it as the only other Muslim majority territory in India after Jammu and Kashmir, is also moving in and moving in ideologically. So those are doubts which have not been set aside, and those are doubts which have not been answered. And finally, if you see a lot of criticism from Kerala. Now Kerala, one, there is a traditional historic aspect to Kerala, although I don't think anybody cares so much about it anymore. So the historical aspect is that the last ruler of the Chera dynasty, he had run away or he had escaped, and he was being searched for, and generally people thought that he settled down in these uninhabited islands. So it was the people from Kerala who first settled here. We don't know. But ethnically, linguistically, culturally, in terms of eating habits, these people, the Lakshadweepis, are very similar to coastal Malayalis, particularly coastal Muslim Malayalis, Muslim Keralites. So that proximity is there, that cousin relationship is there. Also economically, infrastructurally, for all their infrastructure needs, their backups, they depend on Kerala. Somebody falls sick, one of the first things they do, go to Kerala. And remember, this archipelago has peculiar issues. So on one island there may be 100 people living. Somebody falls sick, the island does not have any health facilities barring maybe a primary health center. So the person has to be taken to another island. The person has to be airlifted, say to an island, the central island or Agatti or Kavarati, wherever there might be better health facility, or if this is not good enough, to Kerala. For that to happen, the administration has control of helicopter transport. So that permission has to be given by the administrator. Under the new rules, administrator has made those permissions also tougher. Now there is a committee of 4 which look at all documentation and then decide whether you deserve to be airlifted or not, whether you are sick enough to be airlifted or not necessarily to mainland India, but from one island to another island. Remember, somebody is sick or somebody has COVID, you don't put that person in a boat and say, look, the only hospital, closest hospital is 100 kilometers away by the sea, so I'll take you by the slow boat to hospital. It doesn't work like that. And finally, there is a fear in Kerala, and there is an apprehension in Kerala that the new governor wants to shift that umbilical relationship between Lakshadweep and Kerala to Mangalore. So that umbilical relationship is maintained through ferries or through ferries of goods and passengers between 2 ports on Kerala's coast. One is Kochi, the big one, second is Bepur, a small one. So they think that the administrator is now shifting all this traffic to Mangalore. Mangalore is in Karnataka on that coast. And then the conspiracy theory is, because Karnataka is a BJP run state, and always, even if BJP is not in power, BJP will have a big presence there, unlike say in Kerala. So this is deliberately being done to deny Kerala its connection with Lakshadweep, or deny Lakshadweep its connection with Kerala. Now, if you just look at geography, this runs into a little bit of trouble, because when I also saw this and heard this, I thought, oh, this guy will now get these ships and aircraft and helicopters from Lakshadweep to go all the way to Mangalore. But that is because how we visualize the map of India sometimes is not the reality, particularly peninsular India, which we Delhiwalas don't know that much about. So then I calculated the distances, or I checked out the distances looking at Google and the map of India, and some interesting findings came up. If you look at the distance, say from Agatti, which is the airstrip in Lakshadweep, from Agatti to Cochin, the distance is 457 kilometers. From Agatti to Bepur, the distance is 353 kilometers. So what is the distance between Agatti to Mangalore? It is 369 kilometers. So it's about as much as Bepur, and actually a good 90 kilometers less than the distance from Cochin. So this is all a very complex uncluttered story. That's the reason I thought I'll focus on it. Having said so, I'll conclude this episode with a picture. This is the picture of the Agati airfield. See the Agati airstrip. You see very little on the two sides of the airstrip besides the airstrip. Doesn't it remind you of something? Isn't that something an aircraft carrier? Then are we wrong then to say that on both sides of peninsular India, deep in the ocean, India has these fantastic, indestructible aircraft carrier properties, and these have to be protected very stoutly and also put to good use in a manner that makes the people, the local people happy, more prosperous, not threatened, and also preserves the environment.